Hello, I'm X Toycat, and my most recent Update Adventures project has been to build the entire console edition size Nether at scale in my Let's Play world. This is a 256 by 256 by 128 area that I'm converting into Nether. This has required placing tens of thousands of blocks along my floor, as well as tens of thousands of blocks to make these big walls, and so far it's going pretty well alongside my recycled Nether fortress, but there are two big projects I still need to do. One is replacing all of this ocean with a lava ocean. You can't have blue in the Nether. And the other is to build the console edition exclusive Nether biome of the Nether Wart Valley. That is what I'm going to be focusing on today, and it's going to require a lot of soul sand, which funnily enough can be found in a biome I'm pretty sure was inspired by that console edition exclusive, because we are going to the Soul Sand Valley. This is definitely the least hospitable place in Minecraft for most people. However, if I have to do a destruction project here, I have to do it anyway, and so let's run through preferably as far away from ghasts and skeletons as we can, getting as much soul sand as we can, because this is the key ingredient of the biome we're going to be making today. Obviously, it is the lesser version of the soul blocks. If you're going to be using either in your build, it's almost always going to be soul soil, but not me today. But the other thing we're going to need, on top of getting all of this and avoiding piglins while doing so, is of course Nether warts. There is of course only one way to get Nether warts if you play any modern day version of Minecraft. In the Legacy Console Edition, however, there was a whole biome to get them, and so I might have gathered lots of Nether wart, which I then used to get lots more Nether wart, which I've then started using to get lots more Nether wart, and today I'll be farming that just a little bit more, obviously using a fortune tool of some form. If you're curious as to why fortune, let me show you by breaking these Nether wart with my current pickaxe, or my current hoe I should say. As you can see, I got 3 from the 2, maybe a 4th that went down there, but if we quickly apply fortune to our hoe, I can't believe I haven't put this on here yet. It barely makes sense, but I might as well if I have the book. Now with fortune on the hoe, I'll break 2 more Nether wart, hopefully that are both fully grown themselves. So these 2 look fully grown, 1 and then 2. I got, I think that was 9, 10 instead. That is an insane comparison. If you are harvesting Nether wart, and it has to be done by hand basically, or at least the planting of it does, so it's one of those semi-auto farms you're going to be harvesting by hand most of the time, sort of, you might as well go ahead and put fortune on your tool. By the way, fun fact of the week, did you know you can't use bone meal on Nether wart? It feels incorrect, but apparently it's true. Also is true is I have my lovely skeleton in a minecart hanging out down here at the bottom of the ocean. Don't question why he's here, but do question this transition, because I left Minecraft running today while I went and hung out with my editor. Actually, you know, Harrison, we've been hanging out, we did some go-karting, got some sushi, and so now that I come back, I'm sure, oh yeah, look at that, all of my Nether wart has grown. Wait, not all of my Nether wart has grown. How is that possible? So much of it has grown in weird areas, but okay. Well, the idea was meant to be flawless, and it mostly is. We'll just chop down the bits that look like they have grown. I don't know why Nether wart is weird, but sometimes you just gotta accept that Minecraft doesn't make sense. Sometimes it's the bone meal, and sometimes it's stuff like this. But in case this transition wasn't satisfying enough, something you might find fun is obviously I do a lot of big projects like this, and I do them via live streams, and so if we now take all of this Nether wart back with me, then let me show you something even better, because this is where I'm going to build my Nether wart Valley, but right now you can still see over it. So let me show you one of my favorite things, which is doing progress for before and afters. If you're going to spend hours working on something, and I'm about to, it's really fun to show people before we've done that, and then again after it's done. Actually, you know what? After spending genuinely 2 hours working on this, I'm starting to realize just how long it takes to build these netherrack walls. Every single time we add 10,000 blocks to it, it looks like it gets about 20% higher, but such is the life. Anyway, now the time has come to actually build the Nether Wart Valley. And one of the weird things about the way that the soul sand used to be placed in Minecraft Console Edition is that it didn't used to be placed in massive soul sand-esque valleys where you just have giant blocks like this going endlessly, but instead it kind of spawned as small little pockets. Sometimes these pockets would be fairly large, but they would then, they would tend to be large by the Console Edition biome scale. This means you'd much more likely find a bunch of, Nether wart and soul sand just towards the edge of your biome than you would necessarily find it anywhere anywhere particular, and I always tended to find it at the very ledges of things, and so I think right here is kind of a barrier between, kind of how you have sand between your main land and an ocean. I think that you very much have soul sand between your main, between your ocean of lava and the rest of your world. And although there is going to have to be some fun ways, creative ways we deal with that, I think for now, the idea is fairly solid. And so right over here, that is precisely what I'm going to do. We're going to have a bunch of the soul sand go a level up because it's going to be directly next to a lot of lava, which will be fun by itself. I think when we mix in some nether warts that's going to grow at various rates, I think it should also add some niceness to it. However, when it comes to recreating one of these super old biomes, I think it is important to pay it homage, not just in the ways that it is most memorable, but also the ways in which it's best. I really love finding one of these right at the edge of my world because it basically created a free kind of Neverwart farm for me. And so I'm going to take some soul sand, I'm going to place it all the way over here as just a way to create something between these edges of the world and the rest of it. Just something exciting to go over there for. I think this is something that basically, like, have you ever played an open world game and it just feels like exploring to the edge is unsatisfying? It turns you around and says, hey, you shouldn't have come this far. I love games where there's something at the very edges, where there's some reward for doing something unexpected, because ultimately I think you should always be rewarding people for their good more than necessarily punishing people for the bad. It's something that's come up because, I've spoken to a few parents recently, and they basically all given the same advice, which is like, when it comes to, a child doing something bad, the instinct everyone has is like really, really, really punish a child for doing something you don't like. The carrot and the stick is something people like to believe, but when it comes to, actually raising them, not only is it more fun not to have to beat a child with a stick, but also you'd much rather give one a carrot. And so, this is something I've it's been in my mind that in general, almost every human prefers positive incentives to negative incentives. You would rather work because you will have money that you can use to buy boats and jet skis and fancy caviar, then you'd rather work because if you don't work, you will be homeless and die. There's a little bit of the second one in us always, and indeed, some people have different attitudes to work because of that, but the ultimate part of it is that we would all rather do the first than the second, right? Also, this is looking kind of nice over here. I think it has to kind of have random separations in the biome for it to be true, but I think as we slowly add these, and then also, again, crucially have these Neverwarts in them, it should add a little bit of authenticity to the whole thing. So, yeah, I think the reason I think about that is because it's basically how we would like to be treated in the real world too. I think not just in terms of jobs, but in terms of basically everything else. But then we also all have this kind of dark part of people that's looking specifically for vengeance. It is not enough to say, oopsie, you murdered someone and that's really not nice, but, I would like you not to do it again. I'm going to give you a treat every time you don't murder someone. No, we have punishment and justice systems set up specifically because we don't like that style, and we would like to see other people basically suffer for their miscretions. But it's weird because as soon as the suffering is turned on you, almost everyone goes, whoa, 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 I didn't realize that was an option. I thought this was just a way to make other people be in pain. I think a lot of people have this relationship with the police. If you're really, really pro-police, you think to yourself oh yeah, well, they're really great people, they help people like me, and then one time a police officer gets you for speeding, or something you might have actually done, but you're but that's not actually okay, right? And the same is true for people who are really, really anti-police. When there is a crime that happens, they're well, we need to call the people who deal with this, right? I'm not sure how I would deal with this personally. And there's something absolutely fascinatingly compelling about that to me, that we have this love-hate relationship with authority. Almost everyone out there would say that they wouldn't like to be forced to do something, but yeah, at some point you would like to force other people to do the same. Even if it's something okay, I don't want to force people to do things, but if I need to have a surgery to save my life, I would like to have someone forced to do that so that I don't die. I think that I would like someone to be forced not to hold me up. We have these, we have a lot of notions of rights, and we often tend to think about rights as being exclusively positive. Rights are I had a really interesting conversation this weekend with it was with a human rights lawyer, and they were talking about specifically about how like they really like they used to live in the US, they moved, and they're like they really like judgments that add to someone's overall human rights. They use the most contentious issue you can imagine, the one of something women, and you can imagine where it goes right after that. But they made a really interesting point that like they like when it's a positive right being conferred by a law, and they don't think that laws should ever confer negative rights unless it is a very local democracy that wants it. Like the nation is there to protect your general rights, and then locally you can decide on your much less general ones. But there's a really interesting point that like basically every right that you think you have comes from someone else being denied theirs. I think it is a ludicrous one to say, but yeah, if someone really wants to stab me and everyone up, they are going to suffer the consequences, because as much as they can say it's their right to stab who they like, actually that's not a right that you have. People have the right not to be stabbed more than you have the right to stab people. Basically, every every court ruling, everything like this has to come in at some point, question where your rights have to end for someone else's to begin. By the way, this is kind of nice by itself. I think we could do of like going up onto the side over here, just kind of bringing the biome some texture on that level, because it's just a bit too flat, and so that's my plan here. And so yeah, the idea is really, really interesting to me that we have inside of us these these preconceptions about where our rights end and other people's begins, but we all have slightly different examples of that. Again, like, should there be a man with a gun at the airport who tells me specifically where I have to go? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, depends on how you feel about the risk of things that can happen there. Do you feel like there should be a man who says, no stabbing, Mr. Stabby Meister. You've done enough stabbing for a lifetime already. If you want to stab people, you're going to have to find consensual victims, because you can't do it without asking nicely first. Also, by the way, let's grab way more of this, because I think another fun idea, this is one that Harrison, my editor, sent me just after I mentioned that I was going to build this classic biome. He was like, okay, you're building the biome and it's going nicely, but why don't you build a giant Neverwart? Because this is what a Neverwart looks like. We've all seen it. What if we built a giant Neverwart on a giant patch of soul sand? And given that there's going to be this big void of something, it's going to probably be Netherrack between all of this anyway, wouldn't it be fun? The answer is it totally would be fun. Would it be fun if we deliberately had like a giant patch? We can go to scale 16 by 16 and we build some giant Neverwart on top of it. The answer is yes, of course that'd be fun. And so we're going to do precisely that right now. We start with a nice 4x4 square. This is my pro tip for building something big, by the way. Start in like small little steps, because it's really hard, counting out to 16 is stressful, and what if you get the count wrong, then everything's ruined. So I recommend just starting with like much smaller building blocks and then kind of diagonally work your way across it. So we build 4x4 squares going diagonally across, and then we'll have a 16 by 16 square we can just fill in the gaps for. Because in the same way that like coloring between the lines is so much easier than anything else, I tend to find that when it comes to big projects, it's so much easier just to fill in the work from before than to make fresh stuff. From here to that square over there is a 16 by 16 area, so now I just have to make the lines that represent that. It's really easy, there's no counting, I just finish it. And you can keep your lower brain occupied while your higher brain does other stuff. Because ultimately, some people ask why I like to stream my Minecraft so much, or why I have this Let's Play where we talk about the deeper meaning of justice and what it means to have a right. And some people question, like, why do you do that while playing Minecraft? Like, surely if you want to talk about those things so much, just make a channel called Philosophy with Toycat. And, there is a certain truth to that is interesting. But I also think that there is, whenever you play a game, there's a truth to everything being a little bit more complex than it needs to be. There's never just a video called, I will play Minecraft for 20 minutes and talk about philosophy, or there's never a video called, let's talk about the meaning of positive rights or negative rights. There is a layer of obfuscation there. But I also think the other reason that it's, I think the other thing in there is just when you are doing something that takes up a lot of, when you're doing a chore, you almost want to activate your higher brain. Like if you're using less brain power than you have, you almost always want to use that in some way, is my personal experience. Like, really smart people who work, menial jobs tend to like develop ideas in some real way. That, some people like to believe that like, well, yeah, the blue collar workers are never real so smart. They're all, you imagine them being dumb. But there's some people who like do the most tedious task all day, every day, that are some of the most intelligent people that you can meet. And that's because, yeah, you spend all this time like doing something that doesn't use your brain. So you have the time to really dive into the big, important ethical questions. One that like came to me this week that I don't have a convincing answer for. So I'd love to hear if you think you do after hearing it. But like, is it really possible to give people free choice? Because, you know, free will and determinism is a big debate. Do you actually decide for yourself, or do you decide based on the conditions around you? When I'm hungry, I'm much more likely to decide to eat, and that's not because I have some deep fulfillment. No. Well, I guess I'll fill this in with soul sand. That's the good news that can come from this, I guess. If there has to be some positive that comes from the negative, it's that it'll look like the soul sand didn't just start randomly now. It has a very specific place that it starts. But yeah, are you ever truly making free decisions in that, like, you know, in society, for example, you are allowed to choose to be whatever you want when you're younger. That's what school spends so much time teaching us. But also, you're not truly free, are you? So becoming a doctor is not an equal decision to becoming a retail worker. If you would like to work at your local Tesco, that is something, or, you know, sorry, to internationalize. If you want to work at Walmart, that requires just a GED. I don't know what a GED is, by the way. General Education Diploma. What is that? Is that bad? Is that good? Does everyone have one, or does no? Is it only a thing you get if you don't have other things? I don't know for sure. But it's wild how much like a random American you can pick up without understanding what you're saying, right? It's like if you ever go to like certain like countries in Asia, they'll all have like, you know, they'll have a van covered in not English and they won't speak a word of English. They'll be like, Liverpool, #1 football club. Yeah, it's crazy to me, the stuff that, you know, the stuff that can transcend language barriers and indeed culture barriers in the case of my apparent understanding of my very confusing apparent understanding of that stuff. So yeah, we're gonna start with some neverwarts on the ground. Clearly they have like, they kind of go in at like weird X's like this. So we'll start kind of representing the ground underneath what we're going to have. So we'll have like one of those there, and then we'll have another one over here, and this one's going to be much longer on these sides. So we'll start like there, and then go out like that, and then we'll have another one over here, and we'll kind of just see, looking at them, like clearly like, is this good? So this is perfectly centered, this one is. Anyway, so the thing I wanted to say is like, not every choice is made equal, and this is an interesting struggle for people who like to believe in equity or equality, because, you know, if I want to become a doctor, that is a harder decision than becoming a plumber, for example, and we choose that as a society, kind of broadly speaking, because we want it to be harder to be a doctor than plumber. So when these are fully grown, you have some mini plants that grow between the big ones, so like there. And then kind of like over there, I guess we're going to say. And then over here too. Yep, that's great. And then just 2 over there, I guess. Yep, that's great. So this is going to be my neverwart. It already looks kind of nice, right? And it's also already growing, which is kind of fun. Now we're going to shovel some of this away. I've got very little shovel durability, so we'll make sure it works. And we'll just kind of build the area around it. Because I do want to have the all of this like fully placed up and making sense before then. So yeah, we'll build a whole second kind of biome just in the middle of all of this, which we can connect up with Netherrack. Anyway, so yeah, so there are some decisions that aren't made as freely as others, and you know, even, you know, the argument some people would make in modern day society is that you can't choose to be born into a rich family, for example, or you can't choose to be you can't just choose to be a CEO. Like, if you walk into a business and say, I would like to be your CEO, that's not how it works. You have to like build connections on the way up, and it kind of results in a world where to get ahead, you have to know people to get ahead, which means that their biases become placed on the rest of us. And so, you know, that's where people make their racial argument. They're like, well, if the people at the top only want to have other people who look like them there, then there is no choice but to look like them, meaning some number of people who are qualified don't get to be there. For example, is an argument people would make. And, you know, this is a real concern if you believe in a world of equitable futures where people get to choose their own destiny, because at some point people aren't choosing their own destiny if you don't get to make certain decisions like that. And so okay, so it's kind of a mess of biome right now. I think I'm gonna close in this hole right here, and kind of bring it round. No, I think I deliberately want to leave that unclosed in. I think we will make that curve up there bigger though, and then later this can be all kind of Nevrac to fit the gaps, or maybe it can be lava even. But so yeah, to get back to my point is you don't really have free decisions. They're outside your control, but also all the things within your control. Like I said, being a doctor is harder than being a thing. But even on a different level, like to go to higher education, which is required for so many jobs, requires getting in an unreasonable amount of debt, either via a taxation system that means that you'll pay a lot more in exchange for doing one of those more sought-after jobs, or via the debt system we have in the UK, or via a private debt system where you just borrow money. Having to borrow money so that you can become a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist means that inherently only some people can do those things because you need to have access to one of those systems. And going even a step further than that, it's like, well, ultimately, is it really a free decision if someone says, you can choose to be anything you want, but these are the positions that pay really, really well, and if you want to get one of those, you need to get a unreasonable amount of debt on either yourself or on society or on your family, depending on where you live. And also, is it a free decision to say, yeah, these jobs have different values to society, and so if you pick one with lower values to society, we're just going to provide less for you in return. Should it be fair that an artist, for example, who provides a very hard to define value, gets paid so much less than a doctor? As individuals, no one decides that, but as a society collectively, we decide, yeah, if you're not providing some fixed amount of value for people that can be defined, of course you don't get to just have all the nice things. We're not going to buy caviar for the guy who hasn't done anything besides paint in the last 3 days. We make all these kind of broad decisions about, and we're making them all the time without knowing it unconsciously, which is where some people get into this feeling that, like, rather than unconsciously deciding, rather than having a broad system that makes that decision, wouldn't it be nice if we took these things into our own control? Which is always such a compelling idea until you get to the question, right? And this is what I think people should do. In the same way, I'm a big McDonald's fan. I just had some McDonald's. McDonald's is a unhealthy meal. If you ate McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it wouldn't be great. Fun fact: there's a documentary where someone pretended to do that. He didn't actually. It's you can be pretty sure. But the idea is someone has proven that it is unhealthy. But even if they didn't have the proof, everyone should know that inherently, right? So McDonald's isn't healthy to have every meal of the day, but is it healthy to have as a treat? Well, I mean, it's not healthy, but it's not. It's just as unhealthy as other treats are. And so just that tiny bit of framing of working out, are people going? Oh, also by the way, look at this. It's all my lava's all coming together. My lava ocean will one day exist. But just that framing of, are people eating McDonald's as an alternative to eating something healthy, or are they eating it as an alternative to eating something less healthy? If it's the first one, if you would look at a salad and say, nah dog, don't want me a salad tonight, but only because there is a McDonald's around the corner, then McDonald's is doing harm by existing. Whereas if you conversely would go the opposite way and say, yeah, actually, I really wanted to go, sometimes I'm like, I really want cookie dough. I want specifically cookie dough and ice cream. The warm and the cold, it's so good together. But if there's a McDonald's there and the McFlurry's cheaper, it's less bad for me than doing something more indulgent. So I think in the same way, you have to kind of look at basically anything that ever exists in the world and try not to measure it objectively, because there is no objective when it comes to humans. In how I was saying about how some people believe in you gotta raise your children using only positive forces, and some people hear that and say, no, that's ridiculous. You can't only raise a child positively. And there's always hilarious examples of how you can try that. By the way, this is not coming together how I thought it would at all. I think what I'm gonna have to do is take these back blocks off and just commit to having much bigger kind of stack ups right here. So we'll jump on top here, and we'll see what this looks like if we commit to going real high with it. So we're gonna take all of this now. Apparently, by the way, all of that waiting, I went go-karting. I did a lot today. All of that waiting results in just about enough nether wart to do something like this. And even then, I'm gonna take this block off now, and this block off, and make a slightly higher stack there. Does that look like a corner of a Neverwarp block? I guess it's got to be rounded on the top, so we want to do the opposite, actually. We want to specifically not have it be too high at the top there. We want to, if we want to do this accurately, and you better believe I do, we're going to take this off and do it like that. I think aiming for perfection is a really, really fun idea if you have any idea of what perfection looks like. But in almost every field, perfection, you know, in almost every like actual field you look at, perfection is very, very hard to measure, and actually becomes a challenge of like, okay, who gets to measure what perfection is? How do you get to decide that thing? And I think this is an interesting like lesson in basically anything in life. I always try to look at you know, like basically any situation, and not just judge it by how bad is this, but how bad would this be if the person wasn't here. As an example, I recently found a pair of fake AirPods on the ground, just in the middle of the road. They were very, very visible. I almost feel like they were meant to be found. And so I found these things, and I was, you know, a part of me wants to do nothing, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to do nothing with this. There's no way for me to track down these rightful owners, so what I'll just do instead, you know, what might be more fun and potentially even more useful to the owner, I don't know for sure what they want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these somewhere white so it's not obvious unless you're looking for it or you have some kind of tracking app. If you know roughly where you drop them, you'll find it in no time, right? With Bluetooth or whatever else. But you know, otherwise, if you were looking for them and didn't have Bluetooth, you still might. Is that better? Did I do a better thing than leaving it on the ground? Yes. Did I do a worse thing than giving it to some lost and found office somewhere, specifically knowing that it would be one that he would most likely go to, the person who lost it? So having to look at the local lost and founds, guessing the local, you know, is it as good as doing that, or even better? You're like specifically going on a big campaign to find someone? No. But if the fear of doing the first thing makes you not do, if the fear of doing the second thing makes you not do the first thing, then honestly, that is worth. By the way, I had a bed at some point, but I realize now it blew up when I went to sleep. Oh, there's a baby zombie here. Of course there is. Ruin my life, why don't you? And so, yeah, is it okay to have just a little bit of something life-ruining in there? Yeah, is it okay to have something bad happen if the alternative is something much worse? It feels like the answer should be no. But the more I think about it, the more I arrive at like, well, we all live in very flawed systems all of the time. You know, we should all just start on improving them bit by bit. And that's the worst thing to say, especially if you're like a fairly. I think a lot of people have very revolutionary-minded brains, like, and that's a really important thing in so many parts of the world. But like, you know, for example, if you want to revolutionize the way transport works. This is something I find really interesting. Like, a lot of cities hire like people to help them plan out like transport using data, etc. There's a lot of jobs out there that are like, yeah, we need your help with your particular skill set to revolutionize this. And there are jobs that need that. Like, be a startup app that revolutionizes the way that people buy their dog sitters. You know, like be an app that revolutionizes the way that people book hotels. Because what if someone's really tired and it's 1 a.m. It's 4 a.m. even in Ireland, and no one's letting you book a hotel because you don't have an app. Be a thing that can revolutionize an industry, and like that's really important. But also there are so many places where it's like, if you could just make this thing 5% better, that would be the revolution. I think an example of this is batteries. Every improvement we make to battery technology massively changes the energy mix that we're going to use as a planet in the balance of being much better for, you know, renewable sources of energy, or at least electricity. It doesn't have to be renewable, but there are minor advancements that can be made everywhere that are game changing that people aren't making, because instead of trying to make batteries 5% better, they're trying to invent a new form of electricity. And I sometimes maybe this is my like bias coming out here. Maybe being a revolutionary-minded person is good, but I just think in almost every case in life, preserving the good bits of what we have is worth not making everything perfect all the time. But maybe that's my crazy view. But it is my view. It is the one I have. And I want to know what you think about my Soul Sand, my Neverwalk Valley right here. It is Minecraft Console Edition's oldest biome. And I think right now it doesn't look perfect. I think I'm starting to realize, like, okay, if we're going to make this be great, we really do need to have a lot more Neverwarts. I need a bigger Neverwart farm, and I need to sit there for longer. Because I think that big Neverwart's going to bring the whole biome together. And I also need to work out, like, are there going to be mobs? I can't have these square corners everywhere, so what's going to be the filler in there? How do I make the biome more vertical? These are the questions I can work on and improve on, which is what I'll be doing for now. It has just past midnight in the UK. I've had a very great time recording, but I'm going for if you're curious what I've been up to, I'm going to be going for a like 7 or 8 hour walk tomorrow through a city. I've always wanted to do urban hiking, and it's finally happening. I feel like I've heard about urban camping before, and I was like, that sounds fun, but it turns out that is just being homeless. But urban hiking is definitely much more fun, I hope, and I look forward to updating you on how it goes over on Andrews, the third channel, where I'm doing a few videos talking about like life in London right now. If you want to see those, if you would like to support the channel, you can consider going to the link in the description and getting yourself a Amazon Prime membership. That's right, there's a little bounty. Your boy gets paid if you just sign up for the trial. That's the crazy thing. And or becoming a channel member in general. It is something I hope that you consider doing, unless you don't like it, in which case consider it anyway, okay? Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This Never project is so vast, but I think every day taking a little chip at it, making it a little bit closer to perfection, is what will one day give me that giant goal that I aim for. And I think that's how you need to see every big goal in your life. Unless those goals are killing me, in which case, you know, try not to have them. If your goal is one like, yeah, go kill all the donkeys in the world, maybe you should get worse at what you're doing. But if your goal isn't to do that, then I hope you succeed, because I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. I've been IBX Toycat. I'm eating golden carrots. It's a good day for me. See you next time. Bye.